The phone screen lit up the darkness of my room. He was in the shower, the water drumming a steady beat against the tiles, completely oblivious, and on his phone a single message glowed, like a toxic beacon. It was from a girl I'd never heard of. It said, "When are you gonna leave her?" In that one moment, a 6-year relationship didn't just break. It shattered into a million pieces. He had no idea that by the time his plane landed back home, his entire world, the only world he truly cared about, would be nothing but a pile of digital ash. If you know the ice-cold sting of betrayal and believe that justice shouldn't just be served, but meticulously and creatively crafted, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and prepare yourself for a story where the revenge is as cold as the betrayal was cruel. Let's get into it. Our story started, as so many do now, online. But this was over 6 years ago, in the sprawling, pixelated world of a game called RuneScape. I was 17, a little naive, and he was 14, a kid with a quick wit and a charm that transcended the 1,500 miles between us. It felt like we'd known each other forever. The game was our world. We spent countless hours fighting monsters, completing quests, and just talking. That digital friendship blossomed into a very real, long-distance love. As the years went by, our bond deepened. We'd save up and see each other every few months. Each visit was a glimpse into the future we were so desperately planning. A future where we would finally close that massive distance. My career as an industrial meteorologist was demanding, but it was also the key to our dream. The plan was set. This December, I would finally move in with him. Our RuneScape romance was about to become real. For the longest time, our relationship felt perfect. He was my sweetheart, my biggest supporter, and I was his. But as I grew up, my life got more complex. Work started consuming my time, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. My time in RuneScape dwindled. His, however, did not. In fact, he played more than ever. He floated from one temporary job to the next, never really holding one down, never building a life outside the game. I didn't mind supporting him. I paid his rent from across the country after he moved out of his parents' house. I believed in him. I thought I was investing in us. Then last November, the foundation of our life together began to crack. A perfect storm of my own expenses hit all at once. My car needed major repairs. I had a surprise tax bill, and my own rent was due. For the first time in years, I was short. I couldn't cover his rent for the month. I dreaded the phone call, but it had to be made. When I told him, the reaction was jarring. The sweetheart I knew vanished. In his place was a panicked, crying boy. "I can't live with my parents again," he wailed into the phone. "They'll abuse me." It was a shocking claim, and one I knew for a fact was a lie. I'd met his parents. They had stayed with me. With him. They had given him everything. They weren't monsters. They were just tired of their 20-year-old son refusing to grow up. I tried to be the supportive girlfriend. I calmed him down. I suggested I could help him find a temporary job, just something to tide him over until I was back on my feet. But he wasn't having it. The conversation ended with him being cold and passive-aggressive. The loving warmth we shared was replaced by a bitter chill. Still, I cared. I didn't want to see him on the street. So the next day, I did what I always did. I tried to solve his problems. I called his father. I explained the situation gently, letting him know his son would likely be coming home. I asked if there were any local jobs, and just like that, there was a solution. A friend of his father's needed a manager for a small warehouse. It was simple work, lifting boxes, sweeping floors, taking inventory, and it paid $15 an hour. It was perfect. That night, I called him, my heart filled with relief. I had found him a lifeline. He spat on it. "A shitty warehouse?" he scoffed. "I don't want to work in a warehouse. I don't want to work at all." The silence on my end was deafening. He told me his plan was to do what he always did, play RuneScape, day in, day out. I desperately threw other job listings at him. Anything to get him to see reason. He shot every single one down, and then he delivered the final soul-crushing blow. You know, he said, his voice dripping with an audacity I'd never heard before. I think you should just work harder. Maybe get a second job. Something inside me snapped. I kept my composure on the phone, arguing back calmly until we hung up. But the moment the call ended, I collapsed onto my bed. The tears I'd been holding back came in a flood of anger and humiliation. I work as an industrial meteorologist. My days are filled with complex data, high-stakes forecasting, and a level of responsibility he couldn't even comprehend. And he, a man whose only contribution to our life was using my Hulu account and playing a video game, had the nerve to tell me to work harder. In that moment, I wanted to end it. To cut the cord and free myself from this dead weight. But 6 years is a long time. The memories, the love I thought we had, it held me back. I decided to give him one more chance. Looking back now, it was the biggest mistake of my life. We sort of made up. I helped him move back in with his parents. I even persuaded him to take a small retail job near his house, and for a while things felt okay. He was making his own money. I was still spoiling him. Of course, buying him new games, sending him cash. It was a habit I couldn't seem to break. The old dynamic was still there, but at least he was contributing. Hope, that stubborn, foolish thing, began to bloom again. Last month, we decided to take a big step. We pooled our money, and he flew across the country to stay with me for 4 days. It had been since summer that we'd last seen each other in person. I was ecstatic. For the first few days, it was perfect. He used his own money to take me on dates. It felt like we were finally partners, equals. It was everything I had ever wanted. It was a beautiful, perfect lie. The third night, he went to take a shower. I was tidying up the living room when his phone, lying on the coffee table, lit up. My eyes barely registered it, but the words burned themselves into my memory. A Discord notification. "When are you gonna leave her?" it read. With 5 R's, as if to stretch out the betrayal, the air left my lungs. The world tilted on its axis. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run into that bathroom, to confront him, to unleash the hurricane of fury that was building in my chest. But a strange, terrifying calm washed over me. This wasn't something to be solved with screaming. This required something else. Something colder. When he came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, smiling, I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. From that moment on, the man I loved was dead. In his place stood a stranger, an enemy camping out in my home. If he had dropped dead on the floor right then, I would have stepped over his body without a second thought. I spent the rest of the night watching him play RuneScape on my computer. The game that had been the cradle of our love now felt like a monument to his deceit. He noticed my silence. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with feigned concern. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice a perfect imitation of normal. "Just tired." When we got into bed, he tried to initiate sex. It was our last night together, after all. A wave of revulsion, so powerful it almost made me gag, washed over me. I rejected him as politely as I could, my mind screaming while I whispered excuses. He was disappointed, but he was tired too. Within minutes, he was fast asleep, breathing peacefully beside the woman whose heart he had just ripped out. The moment I was sure he was asleep, I reached over and carefully unplugged his phone from the charger. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was steel. I had to know. I prayed I had misinterpreted the message, that it was all a sick joke. It wasn't. Not only had he been cheating on me, he had been doing it for nearly 6 months. The timeline was sickeningly clear. He had started seeing this other girl right after the phone call in November. Right after I told him I couldn't pay his rent. The moment I ceased to be useful, he had found my replacement. I scrolled through what felt like an eternity of messages. 100,000 betrayals, one for every dollar I'd ever given him. They talked shit about me. He called me emotionally abusive, twisting my support into a narrative of control. He had painted me as the villain, just as he had done with his own parents. And then came the ultimate violation, the thing that turned my grief into pure, unadulterated rage. He had sent this other girl my nudes. Photos I had sent him in trust, in love, and they had picked me apart, mocking my body, laughing at my vulnerability. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. But I did neither. I just sat there, in the dark, as the last vestiges of love curdled into a plan for revenge. I barely slept. When I woke up, the sun was streaming through the window. He was already awake, sitting at my computer, playing RuneScape and eating my food, without a care in the world. Seeing him there, so comfortable in his deception, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. He was no longer my boyfriend. He was an infestation. My first instinct was to tear him apart, to throw him and his belongings onto the street. But my new, colder self took over. I gave him as much love and attention as I could possibly fake that morning. I made him breakfast. I laughed at his jokes. I wanted him to leave thinking everything was normal. I wanted the blow to land when he felt safest. I drove him to the airport. We had a quick, somber goodbye. He had no idea it was forever. The drive home was a blur. I held it together until I walked through my front door. Then the dam broke. I screamed. I cried. I was a storm of pure anger and pain. I kicked my bed frame so hard, the wood split clean in two. I wished it had been his face. As the tears subsided, a cold clarity emerged. Breaking his heart wasn't enough. He had built his entire identity, his entire life, inside a video game, funded by me. I was going to be the architect of its destruction. I sat down at my computer. I logged into our joint RuneScape account. This was the account we had raised together, like a digital child. We'd always joked that if we ever split, we'd split the bank. So I did. I transferred my half of the items and gold to my main account. Then I took his half, and I walked to the busiest area in the game and gave every last coin away to random low-level players. Even the untradeable items. I used a special spell to convert them into coins, and gave those away too. The bank, our shared history, was now an empty void. But that was just the appetizer. It then occurred to me, in a moment of trust months ago, he'd written down the login credentials to his main account and left them in my desk for those times he needed me to do a quick task for him in-game. I didn't hesitate for a second. I logged into his precious, 14-year-old account, the account that was his life's work, his pride and joy. I opened his bank. It was a treasure trove of rare items and vast wealth, and I began to liquidate everything. I sold it all on the game's marketplace, the Grand Exchange. It took a long, long time, but I checked his flight status. He was still in the air. I had hours. By the time I was done, I had turned his entire virtual net worth into 4 massive stacks of coins, over 8.5 billion gold. Now, what to do with it? I could have just given it away. But that wasn't poetic enough. I wanted to waste his life's earnings on the most useless, most insulting thing imaginable. I remembered a friend I had in the game, a quirky guy who collected burnt food. In RuneScape, burnt food is literally garbage. It has 0 use. You can't eat it. You can't sell it. You can't fix it. It's a digital monument to failure. I sent him a message. What is the most obscure, most unwanted piece of burnt garbage you have? His reply was instant. Burnt spider on a shaft. It was perfect. He had a stockpile of over 6,000 of them. I messaged him back. How much? He joked that they were priceless. Feeling generous with my ex-boyfriend's money, I traded him a full stack of gold, 2.147 billion coins, for his entire collection. He was ecstatic. I was a very, very happy customer. I logged back into the cheater's account and deposited 6,083 spider on shaft burnt into his now empty bank. But I still had over 6 billion gold left. With his remaining money, I decided to treat myself. I went on a shopping spree. First, I bought 100 in-game bonds. Each one grants 14 days of membership. I traded them all to my account. I now had almost 4 years of membership paid for. Next, I bought the best armor, the most powerful weapons, All the top-tier gear I could never afford. All of it went straight into my bank. With the last billion, I bought all the supplies I needed to level up one of my most expensive skills. His life's work was now fueling my future. I left him with a measly 150,000 coins, which I gave to a random guy cooking pizzas. Finally, I picked up a pile of bones off the ground and left that, and only that, in his bank. A single pile of bones and 6,083 burnt spiders. I laughed for a solid 5 minutes. But the financial ruin wasn't enough. I had to destroy the very foundation of his account. In RuneScape, many players create what's called a pure account. My ex had one. He had spent 14 years meticulously training his attack and strength skills while keeping his defense skill at level 1. It's a specific, difficult build for player versus player combat. It was his greatest source of pride. Well, not anymore. I took his character to a training area and I leveled his defense skill from 1 to 6. It doesn't sound like much, but in the world of pures, it was catastrophic. It's permanent. It's irreversible. I had fundamentally and forever ruined the very nature of his character. Next, his house. He had one of the nicest player-owned houses in the game. A project that cost billions of coins and hundreds of hours to build. In a matter of minutes, I had it all disassembled. Every room, every piece of furniture, deleted into cyberspace. There's no insurance for that. Then I went through his friends list. Acting as him, I sent messages to everyone online. I confessed to cheating. I told them I was proud of it. The ones who didn't immediately delete him, I removed myself. All of them. His social circle, gone. And for the beautiful, rotten cherry on top of this revenge cake, I changed his username. You can only change it once a month. I used the 12-character limit to let the entire game know exactly what kind of person he was. He can get his old name back in a few weeks, but if he waits too long, I'll be there to snipe it and put it on a throwaway account, forever. Later that night, my phone blew up. A string of hateful, aggressive messages, pictures of him crying. The sweet, satisfying tears of a cheater who had just discovered his world was gone. I let him stew for a while. Then I wrote back a single sincere message. I officially ended our relationship, and I added a little threat, warning him that I was considering my legal options regarding him distributing my private photos. I told him to cease all contact. I have no intention of taking him to court. I just wanted to ensure I would never, ever have to hear from him again. Some might say it was cruel, that I destroyed tens of thousands of hours of his life over a stupid game. But it was never about the game. It was about the betrayal. He made that game his life, and he built that life on my love, my support, and my money. When he proved that none of that meant anything to him, I just took it all back. He learned that I can be a bitch, a mean, meticulous, and thorough bitch. The world he valued is gone, and I have 4 years of free game time, a pile of amazing new gear, and most importantly, my self-respect back. What do you think? Was the revenge justified? What's the most creative way you've ever seen someone get back at a cheater? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of justice served cold. Thanks for listening.